one big piece of advice that both Nikki and I agree on, something that was really hot last year, chances are it's not going to be really hot this year. So don't look back and say, oh, last year this was a chase. Obviously, keep an eye out for it and scan it. But 9 times out of 10, retailers are smart. The things that sold really awesome last year, toys, specific toys that sold last year, may not be as great this year. So don't go in deep if all of a sudden you see something and you remember last year it was a chase.
Hi, and welcome to Your Selling Podcast. I'm your host, Nikki Kirk, aka Your Selling Guide. I'm a small town girl who took a big risk and quit a steady corporate desk job to travel the US in an RV. Along the way, I started selling on Amazon, grew a 7-figure business, visited all the lower 48 states, bought a farm, and today I am still doing what I love to do, selling on Amazon while helping other sellers do it too. Each week, I will share Amazon tips and tricks and bring in guests to share their stories, expertise, and tips on the platforms that they use. Think of this as a sit down with your Amazon bestie where you can learn, ask, start, and grow your online selling business. Welcome to Your Selling Pod. Hey crew, and welcome back. On today's episode, we are continuing with our Q4 prep series, and today I have with me 6-figure profit seller, Becky Stillman. Now, Becky started Amazon in 2020, and by 2022, she was pulling that 6 figures of profit, which I hope is everyone's goal out there. I mean, I know it's mine. So thank you so much, Becky, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Nikki. Hey, everyone.
We're going to hop in with some questions. So I asked on YouTube, on my Instagram, and throughout my community of Facebook groups, what questions you have about Q4. So we're going to start with Zachary. Zachary asks, are there any particular points in Q4 where you feel the busiest? Because I'm trying to plan out my PTO for the rest of the year.
So when it comes to Q4, it really ebbs and flows. I find there's an initial, it starts to really speed up towards the end of September. You really start to notice an increase in sales. Last year, I think the increase kind of started a little bit after the beginning of October, but typically, the last quarter of September, it starts to roll. When I looked at my sales last year, I had a massive jump the week after Halloween. So pretty much like the week of October 31st and forward, there was a 40% increase in my sales. And that really continued. It was nonstop from then on. So there's not a real peak per se. It just pops up and stays up there. Obviously, the week before Christmas, if you do FBM, it's massive. The days before Christmas is massive, especially if you do like seller fulfilled. But really, after Halloween is when it really starts to ramp up.
Yeah, that's what I've found the same, because we all get excited for Q4 and then Q4 starts and it's like, wait, what was all the excitement about? It really does take a little bit. And Halloween is a huge moneymaker of a holiday. And it's like after Halloween, something like clicks in everyone's mind and they're like, oh, okay, now it's Christmas and we got to go out shopping and get all the stuff. So I found that what I hear a lot from other sellers is they run out of stock towards the end of November and early December if they didn't plan enough stuff. But I know, and you do this as well, that like by the time December hits, we're just so tired, but you can't stop because that's when most of your money is made.
Yeah, that's when it's easy. That's when, you can walk into a store, a Walmart, a Target, a whatever, and pay sticker price on the shelf for something and flip it for a profit. That's like the good old days of selling on Amazon. But it makes it, your job's a little easier. You have to contend with the crowds. You have to contend with the lineups, the checkout lineups. But that's when the easy money is to be made. But we're all so dang tired at that point.
Yeah, I would say if I was going to take time off specifically for Amazon selling, I mean, if I had a 9-to-5 that I was going to take time off of to do Amazon, I would say the first 2 weeks of December or that second and third week of December is what I would plan on. And then I know I personally like that week of Christmas all the way through like the first week of January. I just I'm not really sending in shipments anymore. I am relaxing because it is tough out there at Q4. Like you are going to be nonstop running. You're even going to have FOMO, even though you're working all the crazy hours sourcing,
Yeah.
shipping. You'll still have FOMO because you feel like there's more you could do. It's just a crazy time.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I highly recommend if you haven't done FBM, get into it now early because that is where the top dollar money is to be made for Q4. All that last minute stuff. Make sure you're comfortable with it. Make sure you've got your shipping templates and everything set up because that's when, if you're an FBMer, that's when I would take the time off as well. If you're more of an FBA person, maybe, around Black Friday and prior to Black Friday. I'm not big on the Black Friday sales at all. They get pretty flooded and tanked, the items that are on sale. But that is when there's a real, because people, they think Black Friday shopping, they hit Amazon just as hard, even though Amazon pricing, might not be the best deals. The Black Friday sales, people are still shopping. They're in the shopping mode right around that time. So that's also, if you're more of an FBA focused person, that's a great time to really hammer down. Raven in the groups said, I'm starting to look ahead to Q4 and was wondering, for those of you who have been through one before or primarily do FBM, how do you organize your inventory?
So this is funny because I now she shed where all my stuff is at. And it was not organized at all. I have these like massive Tuesday morning bags, which rip Tuesday morning. But if you happen to get them while you had them, I would just put everything on the ground in the shed and that. I have since organized my shed during that June challenge. That was one of my goals, was to organize the shed. So now I have everything organized and just clear bins on shelves in there. And I know, Becky, you have something similar. Yours is way more organized than mine is.
Yeah, it's big. I've got 6 big Costco shelving units, like the big, huge metal shelves. And we've got expiration dated products or grocery items, cosmetics, lotions, things like that on one side, and then toys and other general merchandise on the other side. It's all organized on the left side by date, expiration date. So I know like the expiration dated products are up front and center so I can see them. All of my SKUs for FBM items they include the expiration date on them. So when I'm going through to do my repricing, I know that they're about to expire. Personally, I just did a massive clean out as well. My downstairs it looked like a bomb had gone off. I had a massive dead pile. So if anybody, my number one thing is get in there now while things might be a little slower. Get in, look at your FBM items, clear out what you can clear out, make as much room as you can, get yourself organized, get everything in a good place on your shelving. If you do have shelving, really go through, get rid of dead stock, price older items to sell. You want to free up as much capital going into Q4 because, there is a ton of money to be made, but you also have to spend that money to make that money. So if you've got items that have been sitting stale on your shelves for a while, maybe look at pricing to move, to be able to free up that capital to invest into Q4. Just trying to get yourself organized that way. Your shipping supplies, that's massive for FBM. I've already started to order all of my shipping supplies, poly bags, boxes. Really get more. If you think you need 1,000 poly bags, order 2,000. Really do more because there's nothing worse than having a chase, and then you've run out of poly bags, and then you have to wait on Amazon or wherever you get your poly bags to deliver them.
That is so funny because I've been saying that same thing. And it's funny because that video and that podcast is not yet out, but you literally said exactly what I said. So take it from 2 sellers. You want more than you think you are going to need.
Yeah. I've run out myself, and I buy, thousands of boxes at a time. And, UPS take advantage of their free shipping boxes. They've got 2 different sizes. The 9x6x3 is my jam. They will send them when they have them available. So get in there. You can only buy 25 at a time. Get in there early. we had a tech deck chase a couple of years ago, and those tech decks fit in those free boxes perfectly. And, shipping a Christmas gift in a box is always better than shipping it in a poly bag,
Mm-hmm.
because you have to remember that that's going to be someone's gift under the tree. So just because you can get it to them in a poly bag or a padded mailer doesn't mean you should.
So, Julie from the Bolo group, shout out Julie, when should we start stocking, overloading our storefronts for the Q4 season?
I don't overload per se. I ship every week, but I really start to loosen up my ranking. The ranks that I would typically purchase, maybe toys, I will loosen them up starting in September, late August, September. I'll venture into the higher ranks. I don't just focus on toys, because one of the big things during the holidays, think of what you need. That's the best thing. Think of what you need when you're shopping for toys on Amazon, and then you realize, oh, I need coffee too. I need deodorant. I need to put, deodorant in my kids' stockings. I need, boxers for my sons. I need whatever. Don't just focus toys, toys, toys. Think of everything, general household essentials. I did just as many of them last year as I did toys. So it's more than just toys. There's no easy answer. I would just start ramping up. You'll
Mm-hmm.
start to see an increase, and just start ramping up. And if you've got that capital there to invest, do it and just keep flipping it. Flip it as many times as you can between now and Christmas, and just keep growing.
That's kind of how I am. I don't think of it as much as like I'm stocking, because every shipment I send about the same amount of stuff. It's just that in September, I'm going to start sourcing every week. And so by that nature, there's going to be more stock because I'm constantly sending stuff in. Whereas now I'm like every other week. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing. Plus, we're coming off of the summer. There's not necessarily as much stuff out there. And you'll just find the stores are, because the stores themselves are getting ready. So they're going to have a lot more stuff. Julie has two other questions. Do prices remain high during Q4, and what are some of the top selling items?
I find that the prices tend to climb more, or at least if they're not climbing more, they're a little more stable. They don't tank as quick, because they're moving quicker before the tankers get the opportunity to go in there and drive the price down. There are some items that, if you do find a toy that's a hot item that isn't able to be stocked in stores, or is running out of stock in stores, the price will climb very high. There's no real way of predicting that. You just have to watch. If all of a sudden you've bought something and it sells real quick, and you've priced it high, anything I send in, I price higher. If it sells, then it's like, okay, well, that sold quick, so I'm going to go buy more, and I'm going to price it even higher. And it's that's your way of making more profit. You want to milk as much profit as you can out, and this is the time of year where you're able to push those price ceilings up a little bit higher. You don't have that, Tammy Tanks a lot jumping on, because you're selling so quick that even the tankers tend to keep the price a little higher.
A good example is, I think it was 2 years ago now, the Gabby's Dollhouse.
Mm-hmm.
So you could have seen it in store and there would have been, I don't know, 4 on shelf or whatever. They were pretty big. But if you go in the next week and all 4 were gone, that would be a key indicator that that thing is probably very popular. And so
Mm-hmm.
it was really popular, and everyone was hunting them down and getting so excited and sharing in the group if they happened to find one. But then what
Yeah.
happened was Amazon started capping the prices on it. So that became a whole thing. So there is a aspect of things will go up in price, but Amazon might come in and say, whoa, 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 we're not going to let you sell it for $200. The most you can sell it
Yeah.
for is like 130 or whatever. I think it was like
Mm-hmm.
$70.
Well, it started at 60, and then I think they went up to it was 59, and then it went up to 70, and people were buying it based on being able to sell it for, I think I went up as high as $189 on it. And then Amazon brought the axe down, and an excellent point. One thing to look at when you're looking at your prices and you see a hot item, or an item that is more popular, if you look at your Keepa chart and you see that, you know 2 days ago there was 150 sellers, and then today there's only 5, that's something that you need to keep in mind in addition to it possibly being an IP issue, but Amazon could have brought the hammer down on a price cap. So something to always do, a little way to test that is to go ahead and try and list it FBM in store.
Hmm.
Don't go ahead and go all the way through it. But Amazon will tell you once you put your price in and you go to it'll 9 times out of 10 it'll tell you that that's higher than their suggested retail price. So don't just blindly go buy a bunch of them and take them home. It'll just save you from having to go and return them.
Yeah, I'm always
And
looking at what the sellers are currently selling it at. Is that like if I
yeah.
see one seller was up to 200, then I know like okay, that's as high as I can go. And I also look at Keepa, especially if something's sold out when I scan it. I'll look at Keepa and look at the
Mm-hmm.
historical offers, and you can see what Amazon allowed for that item. So if for example, I saw a deodorant last week, if that I wanted to know how much I could list it for, and the highest I saw was $20. Well, I got it for $10 and I'm going to have to ship that thing. So it's probably not a great, Amazon's most likely not going to let me list it for a price that will make a profit for me. So you can use Keepa for all of that information. And if you're not familiar with Keepa and you're not comfortable with it, you really need to set aside a week and dive into it, because it's going to help you so much in your Amazon business in general, but it's going to help you not make bad buys during Q4.
Yeah, it's the number one tool in my business. I don't ever recommend a seller to be selling on Amazon without having Keepa. So not only are you looking at, how often Amazon comes in stock, because you'll scan an item, you'll look at it and go, holy smokes, this is fantastic. It makes awesome profit. But then when you look at the Keepa graph, you see that Amazon's been in stock 99.9% of the time, and you just happen to scan it the one day they were out of stock. And by the time you prep that item, put it in your shipment, Amazon's back in stock with thousands. So it helps you reduce that risk with your capital, because 9 times out of 10, Amazon's in stock at the price you've paid for it. So definitely take a look at your Keepa for everything. And if you don't, like Nikki said, if you don't have experience with Keepa, get on the Keepa train.
Another question that Julie had and a couple of other sellers had was what kind of items sell the best? And it really, truly is everything. So obviously toys are going to be big, but you shouldn't just focus on toys,
Mm-hmm.
because my other top category was beauty. And you
Yeah.
don't necessarily think of that, but everyone's buying everything during Q4. And so I just kind of add seasonal stuff into whatever I'm already sourcing, but there really is like your top item might be a random kitchen utensil that has nothing to do with the holiday, right? So it's
Yeah.
kind of everything goes.
Yeah, absolutely. And one big piece of advice that both Nikki and I agree on, something that was really hot last year, chances are it's not going to be really hot this year. So don't look back and say, "Oh, last year this was a chase." Obviously, keep an eye out for it and scan it. But 9 times out of 10, retailers are smart. They see that the hype, like with the Gabby doll houses that Nikki was talking about, if you look, they're on clearance all over the place now. They've flooded the stores already with them because they're trying to chase that whole demand that was out 2 years ago. And that demand was created by the lack of inventory. The things that sold really awesome last year, toys, specifically specific toys that sold last year, may not be as great this year. So don't go in deep if all of a sudden you see something and you remember last year it was a chase. It could be something that ends up being overproduced.
There's a lot of the time in the Q4 Bolo group, we'll all start chasing something, but we don't know what it is until so you can do all this on your own, right? You can be looking in the stores and you can be like identifying things, but most of the time, like the tech deck that Becky mentioned earlier, that was not something that I necessarily would have scanned or seen, because actually Walmart put it in a random place. It was like in the stocking aisle basically. But for someone posted it in a group, and so now we're all on it. And because it's hard to find, I think Becky, you didn't find them till like the
The
last
week
minute.
before, yeah, it was literally like the last week before Christmas, and I bought the entire pallet and they all sold. Like, I never would have. And like Nikki said, the location in the store, it wasn't with the toys. It was off in my store, it was in the garden center. So, like where the decorations are and things like that. And, I never would have even thought of it. But it wasn't until, the Q4 Bola group, I ran out at 10 o'clock at night when I found out they had stock at my one Walmart. and went and filled a couple buggies with it. So, shout out to the Q4 Bolo group. That thing, I made a lot of money off of leads to just things I couldn't scan because they were already gone off of my shelves. So I didn't even know it was a chase until someone in the group said it. And then all of a sudden I'm like, okay, cool. And the profit to be made from that was insane. I sold them all in like 2 days, an entire pallet.
That was fun times.
Yeah, it was. I only got one store out of all the Walmarts around me. I've got probably 12 different Walmarts within a 40-minute drive, and only one store ever got stock in them. That was it. And I bought that entire pallet. No one had even touched it, and it was gone in 2 days. So that was massive. Set your shipping. That's one thing, actually, your shipping template. If you look in your shipping settings, there is a limit that you can set for the amount of FBM orders per day. If you don't have help, if you're trying to work full time and do Q4, an awesome suggestion is limiting the amount of FBM orders you can get, because I listed this entire pallet and I was getting over 200 orders per day. I have full-time help to prep my FBM and ship my FBM orders. If you're trying to hold down a 9 to 5 and do this, that's something you need to consider. So all of a sudden you don't come home from work and have to stay up until 3 o'clock in the morning packing orders.
Bitten Pickles asked from YouTube, which kind of, we touched on this, but I'm going to ask it anyways. Do you tend to focus sourcing on different products during Q4 versus what you would source for the rest of the year? I kind of mentioned this. I source my regular stuff. So it kind of changes throughout Q4. So I'll source my regular stuff and add in those seasonal items that I start to see. So back to school this year is kind of a miss just because of the backpacks and the lunch boxes all wanting child testing certificates and all that kind of stuff. So that's not really my focus. So now I'm looking for Halloween first. So when I start to see Halloween, I'll start to scan that. But what happens as Q4 goes along, I've got my BOLO lists that I'm using to go off of what everyone else is finding and selling. And so it becomes more of a run in and grab stuff and go to the next store. Like you kind of get into the replen mode as Q4 goes on, and you're not necessarily scanning. I mean, I am scanning new stuff that I see, but it's not as much as the rest of the year.
Yeah, I'm the same. One thing I do, you can't avoid, the little kids throwing their fits in the toy aisles. I listen to them, because if they're freaking out going, oh my goodness, like there's certain toys I'm selling right now I've never heard of. My kids are all older. So, the whole like Coco Melon and Gabby and all that stuff, I didn't think about any of that. But when you go to the store and you consistently hear these kids freaking out about a specific thing, listen to them. That's or talk to your nieces, talk to your nephews, talk to your friends' kids. If you don't have younger children of your own, find out who the hot TV show is, what the hot movie is. But yeah, I'm the same. I source everything. And then you get into replen mode. Like once you're selling things, it's easier to make your stop or to do like curbside pickup at these stores. Mm-hmm. If something you've purchased that you've scanned that's good, 9 times out of 10, you can go to your curbside pickup, and then it's easy peasy. It's just saves you time.
There's nothing quite like that sound of a new order coming through on your Amazon account. But do you know how much you're actually making on those orders? Your Selling Podcast is excited to partner with Sellerboard. Sellerboard is an accurate profit analytics for Amazon sellers as well as eBay. With just a quick login to the app or your dashboard on a desktop, you can see what your true numbers are for all of your Amazon orders by the day, week, or month. I love to use it to forecast out how I'm going to do that month and use it for my planning. Sellerboard doesn't just tell you your profit, though. They actually do so much more. So if you're creating a private label listing or you're making your own bundles, you can use Sellerboard to get reviews for your product pages. Sellerboard is a robust profit analytics tool, and I use it every day in my Amazon business. You can try Sellerboard yourself, connect it to your Amazon or eBay accounts, and see how it works for you. Get 2 months free by going to yoursellingguide.com/sellerboardprofit. Again, that's yoursellingguide.com/sellerboardprofit. Try Sellerboard today and get the true profit picture of how your business is doing.
Maddie asked, how do you deal with the transparency code issue?
So this is not necessarily Q4 specific, but I wanted to touch on it because it is a question that comes up a lot. So if you Google transparency code, you'll see what it looks like. It's basically a QR code that's on a product, usually by the UPC. It's a way for the brands and manufacturers and the retailers to track where it's been. I think it's because of all the looting that happened in 2020, I think it was. I'm not really sure. That's my hypothesis on it anyways, but people are just tracking where the inventory is going and coming from. So as far as I'm aware, I've not had this myself. In the past, it was a hairdryer from TJ Maxx, and this was like a long time ago. I didn't even know they were becoming more of a thing at the time. But I just was like, I don't know what that is. And so I took it back to TJ Maxx. But now I know how you do it. So there is a transparency app you can get where you would scan the code and it'll tell you the serial number. And that's what Amazon wants. It wants either a photo or both, a photo of 5 of them. So you would have to have 5 of whatever that product is. And you just send it in like applying like you're getting ungated basically, only it's a lot easier. You're just sending in the photos or you're entering in those serial numbers from the transparency codes. Now, I have heard in the groups that it does happen that you might have to do it every time. Again, I've not had it happen personally, so I'm not 100% sure. But Becky, do you have any?
Yeah, I've only had it happen one time, and it was for a Adidas Atlanta Braves hat or a Nike Atlanta Braves hat. And I personally was just like, I don't have the time or the patience to deal with stuff like that when it's not something that I'm buying from a wholesaler or that I'm buying in bulk. If it's just like a one-off or two-off thing, for me, I just end up returning it because there's just so much more out there that I could focus my time on. Now, if I had just bought a pallet of something and it came up, then, I would go through all the steps I had to go through to be able to list it.
Another question that comes up often around actually like starting in July is, do you hold stuff and basically hope that it sells for more come Q4? Now I know my stance, but what do you do?
I'm a bit of a hypocrite with this. I always tell everybody, do not hold anything. Flip that money because that $5 item that you're holding on to in hopes of it being phenomenal, you could take that $5 and flip it so many times. On occasion, I have bought things to hold until Q4, but I have a lot of capital. So it's not that much of a risk. If you have limited capital, I suggest not doing that. Like, do not hold anything. If you have a limited capital situation, like if you don't have, a lot of money at your disposal, I suggest flip it now, flip things now. Do not hold them because the money that you're spending on an item to hold right now. So say you've bought a $20 Lego with the intent right now, it's only going to make $4, but you think that at Christmas time, it's going to make double. You're holding that capital. It's sitting there not making you money. You want your money to make you money now. So buying and holding, I don't ever really recommend it. I would rather see you spend the money, flip it, make that money, buy more stuff, and continue to grow, continue to snowball. Buying and holding is risky. You never know what's going to happen. Say you're buying a toy and all of a sudden Target has decided to liquidate that item. And then it sends that item so you've paid $12.99 for a toy. Well, then now Dirt Cheap or any of the other liquidator stores have it there for $5. So you're holding this item, it's past the return date with anticipation that you're going to make money on it. But now, it's going for $12.99 on Amazon. So then it's a risk. If you've got limited capital, flip that money, grow that capital. And so when a chase does come out, you've got the money to buy it. Because if you've been you've got a bunch of Legos that you're holding in hopes of profit, and then all of a sudden you're in one of our groups and someone says, hey, there's a hot chase for this item, like the tech decks, but you don't have the capital to purchase them and you're staring at them in your Walmart, There's no more frustrating feeling.
Yeah, I'm the same. I don't recommend it. In fact, I mean, you obviously everyone can do what they want to do with their business, but I would say you should be selling for 2 or 3 years before you even think about doing that, because you're just gonna, most likely it's not gonna work out in your favor.
Mm-hmm.
And we can assume we know, we can assume we think that movie's gonna be hot, and like last year we could have assumed that Avatar was going to be hot, and then this year it's all being marked down in clearance because it wasn't hot.
Yeah.
I know the Barbie movie just came out, and so we can assume that it's going to be hot, but let me tell you, I used to work at Mattel. They know how to make toys, and they're going to make a lot of them so that they can make all that money. So if a Barbie becomes hot, it's going to be one very specific one that for whatever reason they didn't make a lot of. So it's
Right.
all those kind of things. Little Mermaid, another one. I've been scanning Little Mermaid. None of it's really making money. Why? Because they made a lot of toys. Like,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
there's all those things that you can assume or hope. But if you're not going off of any factual, you're just doing a disservice. I didn't
Yeah.
hold anything until last year, and it's not been worked out well for me. I spent like $400 or $500 on Legos. I did all the research to learn that they are discontinued, but there's so many out there that I might have to hold them another year. So it's just
Yeah.
not, it wasn't worth it. Like Becky said, I have the capital, I could do that, but I don't like it. It's taking up room that I could have in my shed for other stuff that I could be selling, right? It's not about the capital
Exactly.
for me, it's about the room. If this is a question I just thought of on the fly. So what is one mistake that you've made in Q4 past?
Oh, my biggest mistake was it was my first year selling during Q4. I had misunderstood information that was said, like when I was told the last day that you want your FB. I wasn't able to sell FBM my first before because back then they had regulations. You had to sell so many items, and Amazon didn't track my FBM items properly. You were supposed to sell 25 FBM items, I think, to be able to sell items FBM for Q4. So I had missed that boat. So I wasn't able to do FBM my first year. And something that, we always say is for your items to become your seasonal items to become available by Christmas, you want them sent in by a certain date. In my brain, how I heard it was that's when you stop sending in toys or whatever you want, you know. Anyways, I stopped. I sold out of everything.
You
I
just
had
stopped
nothing
sending
else.
stuff in.
Well, yeah, I thought I was like, that was it. In my brain, I was like, that's it. I'm okay. That's that. Because I take a break during the holidays because I've got 5 kids. I've got a large family. I started my break too early. I ran out of items. And so I suggest don't stop. Don't stop until just keep going. Because you think of all the gift cards that get purchased over, Christmas and whatnot. Toys, things like that are still going to move. They move all year round, but they're going to move. My Januaries are always as big as my Decembers.
Mm-hmm.
Think of people that don't celebrate Christmas at the same time or don't celebrate holidays at the same time. They may get together with their family after the holidays. I know a lot of retail workers don't do Christmas celebrations until after because they're so exhausted. So don't stop. Just keep feeding the machine. Keep feeding the machine. Get your house in order. Get everything in order so you can dedicate your time to Amazon. So I guess that was my biggest mistake was just stopping too early.
Mine was I went a little bit too deep on some Black Friday deals. That was a mistake that kept on giving because my ROI for the beginning of this year, so that was last Q4, I made that mistake. I was just so excited, feeding the beast, sending stuff in. Like a lot of them were toys that I actually had sold earlier because they were on sale earlier. And so I was just watching for the price to go back on sale for them. And so when they
Mm-hmm.
did, unfortunately, everyone else who was looking at Black Friday deals also got them. And then so the inevitable price tanking on those specific items happened. And so I actually took a huge hit to my ROI through the beginning of 2023 because I still had that stock, and a little bit is on me. I wasn't paying attention to all my items because everything was selling and I didn't realize, oh, wait, some of them are not really selling and maybe I need to move earlier rather than hold out on them because
Right.
they never really rebounded in price.
Yeah. Yeah, the Black Friday deals. Remember, those Black Friday deals are for everybody. Everybody gets them. I don't buy. I had a perfect example with those Rainbow High dolls. There was a multi pack at Walmart. That's this is another mistake I guess I've made too. I purchased a bunch of these. It was a multi pack, and I posted it in the Bolo group, and someone was like, "Hey, the listing's for 5 that has 4," or vice versa, whatever it was. It wasn't exactly, even though I scanned the barcode, it came up. I scanned the front, it came up. Make sure you scrutinize those listings. But I personally do not buy any Black Friday door crashers at
Mm-hmm.
like Walmart, Target, things like that. There was one that I did get at a different store that was phenomenal for me, but it was a different store that most people weren't looking at. So I really recommend not hitting, go ahead and test the waters, but understand that you are scanning it at the same time as thousands of other Amazon sellers. So, take advantage of the sales where they have like the percent off
Mm-hmm.
and maybe dig for your items there. But like actual toys, or, there was some Pokemon card packages that were, I think they were $15 at Walmart. And when you scanned them on Black Friday, they made $15 profit. They didn't, by the time I bought them and I listed them FBM, the amount of sellers had doubled the price. I think I ended up making $1.15 on them at the end of the day. And I listed them FBM in store. So you really have to be considerate of where you're purchasing, what type of sale you're purchasing. Okay, Nikki, Monica asked, is it too late to get ungated in the toy category?
No, it is not. It's never too late. So I say this example all the time, but I got ungated in October for grocery. And so if you're able to buy from a supplier who can give you the invoice kind of fast, which most suppliers can, you can get ungated in like 1 to 2 weeks. It doesn't, it or even less if the supplier ships like next day, like some of the toy suppliers do. So it's never too late to get ungated because first of all, toys sell year round, like Becky said, like they're never gonna not sell. They happen to sell more, like you can go up into the higher category rank for Q4. Like I'll go up to even 400 in toy, but the rest of the year I kind of stay at like 200 is my max. But it's never too late to get ungated if you want to get ungated. Like it's always a good investment for your business. I, of course, have guides. I'm sure you guys all know that each guide, the toy guide has 3 different suppliers, the topical guide has 3 different suppliers, and then they have groups, Facebook groups, so you can join and ask questions. But it's definitely worth it to get ungated if you have the funds, and it's definitely not too late. Like what are we in August right now? There's still plenty of time to get ungated and get selling
Yeah,
for Q4.
couldn't agree more with that. Definitely jump on ungating whatever you can get ungated in right now, because it's just going to open up your pool of being able to source.
So now we're going to talk a little bit about the Bolo group, the Q4 Bolo group, because it did come up in the questions about Q4. So what do you got, Becky?
The Q4 group's amazing. I can't say enough about it. It's such a tight knit community, and the level of leads that are shared in that Q4 Bolo group are unparalleled. My profits, I would estimate probably a solid 40 to 50% of my profits came from leads directly from that Q4 Bolo group. It's such a fantastic and supportive community, and it's typically a higher caliber of sellers as well. So you're seeing some really solid hardcore leads that are making absolutely amazing profit. I'm definitely a fan, and I think that's out of all of the groups that Nikki has, that's my favorite, and that's the most asked about. Like when the people that are in it are like, okay, when are you going to do it again? When are you going to open it up again? So it's not very often you've got an unhappy customer in that group. It's a lot of fun, and everybody seems to really profit well from it.
So it's opening in 2 weeks. So it'll be open August 27th. only be open to join for 3 weeks. So that is one of the things that makes it different and more exclusive, because you won't have new members coming in every month like the regular Bolo group. You're welcome to join anytime. It's open throughout the year. And so you have a mix of people coming in and out all the time, right? But this group, we close the doors pretty much mid-September. So Q4 hasn't even totally officially started just yet, but we have our group. And we also have twice monthly live hangout calls. So they happen over Zoom. So you get to see everybody's face if they turn the camera on anyways. And everyone's asking questions. We're sharing different leads. You're asking whatever it is that you need to ask. I always say there's no dumb question. We don't know what we don't know. And so you're never going to know if you don't ask. And so you really get that. You get to ask in there. You can ask in the group at any point, but it's so much more than a bolo. I mean, the bolos are definitely worth it, like Becky said, but it's so much more than that. You get this whole community of amazing, awesome sellers.
Yeah.
You have experienced sellers who come in every year. Then you have new sellers. So if this is your first Q4, you are absolutely welcome and encouraged to join. I know Alejandra asked, what are the requirements to participate in the Q4 Bolo group? So one, you have to obviously join. And then really all the requirements so you have to share one valid bolo every calendar month. So that is 4 leads that you have to share for that whole time. And the lead requirements are the same as my bolo group. So it's 150,000 in rank or better. So obviously solid selling ranks, they have to make $5 profit. Amazon can't be selling it. It has to be ungated and all that kind of stuff. But it's pretty easy to find a lead. So if you've been selling for a month or a couple of weeks, I am wholly confident that you will be able to share something. So don't let that hold you back. The requirements are pretty straightforward, and what you're going to get out of it is so much more, I would say, valuable than just the cost of it.
I agree. And even just the lives alone. There's a lot of experienced sellers. I'm on them all the time. Obviously, Nikki's on them. And so you've got full access. And there's some lives that are, were 2-3 hours long, answering questions, giving advice, and we're all there to roll through the punches that Amazon throw at us. So, we've just gone through with these compliance documents with the backpacks. If Amazon decides to play any games and do anything crazy like they like to do, having that full team of support so we can all get through it together is just amazing. And, having the lives and being able to have instant answers to your questions. And, I've walked away from every live that we've had and I've learned things. There's just so much knowledge out there to be given. We've all had our own experiences with selling on Amazon. So being able to share in those experiences with everybody, it's amazing. It's helping you support your business and build your business. So and the fact that people can't come and go, it creates like a safe space. And more often than not, you see sellers sharing multiple leads per month. So it's more of a safe space. Not that any other place isn't a safe space, but it's, that community is there from day one to day done. So that part is really fantastic.
One of my most profitable items last year, I'm sure you guys have heard me talk about it, was a bundle that I made on my own. And I did a video recently for it because everyone was asking about how to make them. I literally learned how to make them, because you hit this glitch where it won't let you put the brand or it wants a UPC, right? And we don't have that. And so I never knew how to get around it. It was in one of these live hangouts that another seller on the call who had the experience said, all you do is this. It is literally that simple. I'm learning myself in there all the time. And so because of these live hangout calls, I learned how to do it. And I had the most profitable item, which was a bundle I created. So I'm the only seller on it. And it just turned out great. But I would have never known really how to do that without digging through the internet and trying to find it, without someone just freely sharing it. And that's what happens in these calls. So I think another question Angie had was what's the difference between the Bolo group and this Q4 one? It's these hangout calls, really. It's since it's closed, it's a tighter knit community. It's limited in capacity, so there'll only be 200 sellers in it. And all these kind of things just make it different. It's kind of hard to say, but it's just different.
Yeah, it's just different. And I really think the fact that it's the same faces, it's the same people the entire time from day one to day done. So you've got the entire Q4. It feels like you've got a whole team going into Q4 and the faces aren't interchangeable. when it comes to the regular bolo group, people come and go, and there's a lot of the same people in it. But with your Q4, so we're all in it to learn. We're all learning. There's so much information that gets given out in these lives, and just the community. It's always been a fantastic community, and the profitable items. It's unreal, and personally, it's my favorite group, and people have been asking about it since I feel like March, April.
Yeah.
When are you opening up the Q4 group? When are you opening it up? Because it's such a positive experience. Everybody that walks away from it is feels like $1,000,000 because there's certain items that you never would know about.
So stay tuned. That is opening in, I think it's just under 2 weeks actually, but August 27th, it'll be opened all the way through September 18th, or if it fills up to 200, because I am going to close it at 200 to keep it that smaller community. So, Becky, what is your one piece of advice to sellers if this is their first Q4?
My one piece of advice, really, I mentioned it earlier in the group. Get yourself familiar with FBM if you haven't already. FBM. If you're scared, I bet you were scared to start selling on Amazon. But look at you, you're selling on Amazon. Do it. Figure it out. Do it. If you have questions, Nikki and I are both in the groups. If you're not part of the Bolo group or any of Nikki's groups, you need to join up because there's just such a wealth of knowledge there. There's so many other sellers that answer questions before Nikki and I can get to them a lot of the times. But get yourself comfortable with FBM. Get yourself set up on a nice shipping template that makes sure you're making money. And honestly, that I can't preach FBM enough because there's just so much money to be made in the month of December alone from FBM. What about you, Nikki? What's your number one piece of advice?
Plan to be exhausted. Tell your family you'll talk to them later. Like, it's just, you just are going to be going. It's nonstop, and it's kind of a long time. You'll be nonstop for like 8 weeks, right? But then there is the light at the end of the tunnel, and you might have FOMO because we all have our capital capacities. So we only have what we can spend, right? And so if you're limited on your funds, make smart buys, do all your research, limit risks as much as you can, test small amount of products, and just take notes and keep learning on how you can grow for the next Q4. Because I promise you, after the first Q4, you're definitely going to want to do it again next year because you'll learn a lot. But as I said, the number one thing that whenever I hear from, or I ask, what would you change if this was your first Q4? It's that they run out of stock too soon because things get crazy real fast. And so it's going to be a slow lead up to it getting crazy, but it will get crazy. And all of your stock, if you don't have a lot of it, is going to sell out really fast. And you're going to kind of be losing out on all those sales if you can't get more. So definitely just plan to be tired, plan to do it anyways, even though you're tired, and just send as much stock as you possibly can. That was a lot of tips.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's, really plan out. You're going to be tired. I planned last year on sourcing right until Christmas. And I think December 14th, that was my day. I came home from sourcing and said, I'm done. And that was it. And I was just done. So, really keep your mental health in check. Make sure if you're burnt out, step away for the day, take your time, get yourself back, especially those of you that are handling a 9 to 5 at the same time, or those mamas that have all the babies at home and all this, everybody that's juggling multiple things, really keep your mental health in check. Don't overextend yourself financially. That is, like Nikki said that too, capital is capital. Do not go crazy. Don't go mortgaging your house and opening up new credit cards and doing all sorts of crazy stuff. Tighten up the reins on what you're going to buy. If you've only got $1,000 in capital or $500 or whatever you've got, make that money, make the most money for you. So find the best bang for your buck.
Well, thank you, Becky, so much for joining me for this podcast to answer everyone's questions. As she mentioned, you can tag us if you're in any of my groups. Feel free to tag us at any point with any questions. There's no dumb questions. Wherever you're listening to this podcast, will you do me a huge favor and subscribe or follow the podcast? And if you want to go one step above and leave me a review, it would mean a lot. So thank you guys so much for listening. Until next week, happy sourcing.